Stories, fables, ghostly tales, the podcast.
Welcome, listeners, to another journey into the dark. Settle in, lock your doors, and turn down the lights. You are listening to Stories, Fables, Ghostly Tales, and I am your host, the Tale Teller. Tonight, we are stepping away from the phantoms that linger in old houses and the cryptids that stalk the tree lines. Tonight, we are looking at a different kind of ghost story. The kind that happens in broad daylight. The kind that leaves behind the chilling emptiness where a human being used to stand. We all leave a footprint in this world, a digital trail of receipts, text messages, social media posts, and the memories we imprint on those we love. We are anchored to reality by 1,000 invisible threads, but what happens when those threads are violently severed? What does it take for a person to simply vanish? In this special extended episode, we are going to dive deep into two of the most baffling, unsettling, and haunting disappearances in modern history. Two cases separated by decades, by geography, and by circumstance, yet bound by a singular, terrifying thread, the profound mystery of the shadows they left behind. Our first story takes us to the sun-drenched shores of the Black Sea, a place of leisure, of holidays, of escape. But for one young man, it became the threshold to an abyss. The year is 2014. The month is June. We are in Varna, Bulgaria, specifically at the Golden Sands Resort, a highly popular tourist destination known for its cheap drinks, vibrant nightlife, and endless beaches. It's the kind of place young Europeans flock to when they want to forget about their responsibilities for a week. Enter Lars Mittank. Lars is 28 years old, a German national from Varna. By all accounts, Lars is entirely ordinary. I don't say that to diminish him, I say that to emphasize how terrifyingly normal his life was before the vanishing. He is a power plant worker. He loves football, specifically the club Werder Bremen. He has a steady life, a loving mother named Sandra, and a solid group of friends. He has no history of severe mental illness, no known paranoid episodes, and no enemies. He is, for all intents and purposes, just a guy on a lad's holiday. For the first few days, the trip is exactly what it was supposed to be. Lars and his friends are relaxing on the beach, hitting the bars, and enjoying the warm Bulgarian summer. But the pivot point of this entire tragedy, the domino that sets everything in motion, happens over something entirely mundane. Sports. On June 30th, Lars and his friends are at a bar. Lars, wearing his Werder Bremen jersey, gets into a verbal altercation with a group of fans supporting a rival team, Bayern Munich. It's the kind of petty argument that happens in bars across the world every single weekend. But this time, it escalates. Later that evening, Lars is separated from his friends. We still don't know exactly what transpired in those missing hours, but when Lars returns to his hotel, he is battered. He tells his friends he was jumped by the rival fans he argued with earlier, or perhaps by men hired by them. The physical toll is immediate. His jaw is bruised, his ear is in agonizing pain. A visit to the local doctor reveals the extent of the damage. Lars has a ruptured eardrum. Now, a ruptured eardrum is painful, but it is rarely life-threatening. However, it comes with a very specific, non-negotiable medical instruction. You cannot fly. The changes in cabin pressure inside an airplane could cause severe, permanent damage to his hearing. The doctor gave Lars a strict order: stay off the plane. He was also prescribed antibiotics to prevent infection in the torn tissue. The drug is called cefuroxime 500. Keep that name in the back of your mind. Cefuroxime 500. It is a detail that has spawned 1,000 theories. My wonderful telltale listeners, Lars's friends are due to fly back to Germany on July the 7th. Lars, adhering to the doctor's orders, tells them to go ahead without him. He assures them he will be fine. He'll find a cheap hotel, rest up, wait for his ear to heal, and fly back in a few days. His friends hesitate, but Lars insists. He waves them off, watching them head to the airport. And just like that, Lars Mittank is completely alone in a foreign country. He checks out of the resort and moves into a budget hotel called the Hotel Color in a rougher, poorer district of Varna. It is a stark contrast to the bright, tourist-filled golden sands. This is where the timeline fractures. This is where the ordinary vacation dissolves into a waking nightmare. Almost immediately after checking into the Hotel Color, Lars's behavior violently shifts. The calm, rational young man vanishes, replaced by someone utterly consumed by terror. He calls his mother, Sandra, back in Germany. He's whispering. He sounds breathless, frantic. He says, "Something is wrong. They are not letting me leave." Sandra is confused, trying to soothe him, asking who they are. Lars tells her that 4 men are following him, 4 men who want to kill him. He tells her to cancel his credit cards immediately. He is terrified to stay in his room, convinced that people are listening at the door, waiting for the right moment to strike. Sandra is hundreds of miles away, gripping her phone in the middle of the night, utterly helpless. Her son, the grounded, reliable young man she knows so well, is unraveling across the continent. She begs him to calm down, asks him to explain who those men are. Are they the football fans from the bar? Are they locals? Lars doesn't know. Or if he does, he won't say. He just insists they are out to get him. Then he sends her a text message, a text that has fueled endless speculation on Reddit threads and sleuthing forums across the internet. It reads simply, "What is cefuroxime 500? Remember that name? The antibiotic prescribed for his ear. Why is he asking his mother about it? In the pitch black hours of the morning, alone in a cheap hotel in Varna, Lars is obsessing over this medication. Is he experiencing a rare, psychotic reaction to the drug? Or has he discovered something else? Perhaps a realization that the pill he was given wasn't an antibiotic at all? We may never know, because Lars doesn't stay in the Hotel Color. Sometime in the dead of night, he flees. He leaves the hotel and vanishes into the dark streets of Varna. We don't know where he goes or what he does for the next few hours, but as dawn breaks on July 8th, 2014, a cab pulls up to Varna Airport. Lars steps out. He has his bags, he still has his passport, he has his phone, he has survived the night. To anyone watching, he looks like just another tired tourist ready to go home. He calls his mother one last time. The panic seems to have subsided, replaced by a grim determination. He tells her he has made it to the airport. He tells her she can wire him some money via Western Union. He is going to see the airport physician just to get the final clearance to fly. Sandra breathes a sigh of relief. The nightmare is over. Her boy is coming home. But the nightmare, listeners, was only just beginning. Lars walks into the clinic of the airport doctor, a man named Dr. Kosta Kostov. Dr. Kostov examines him and notes that Lars seems nervous, erratic. He checks the ear and tells Lars what he wants to hear. He is fit to fly. It's over. He can go on the plane. But Lars is still terrified. He tells the doctor he doesn't trust the medication. He refuses to take any more of it. And then the catalyst, the spark that ignites the powder keg. While Lars is in the examination room, the door opens. A man walks in. According to the doctor, it is simply an airport construction worker, a contractor doing renovations in the terminal. But to Lars, this man is not a construction worker. To Lars, this is one of them. Lars' eyes go wide. The terror that had been simmering just before the surface erupts. He stands up, he looks at the doctor, he looks at the worker, and he utters his final recorded words. "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." What happens next is captured on the airport security cameras. It is arguably the most famous, most analyzed piece of missing persons footage of the 21st century. Lars doesn't just leave the room, he explodes out of it. He leaves his bags on the doctor's floor. He leaves his phone. He leaves his passport, his wallet, every single item that ties him to his identity, his home, his salvation, abandoned in an instant. The CCTV camera in the terminal hallway catches him. He isn't jogging, he's sprinting. He's running with this frantic, desperate gait of a prey animal being hunted by a predator. He passes stunned tourists, families with luggage, airport security. No one stops him because no one knows what is happening. The camera angle switches to the exterior of the terminal. Lars bursts through the automatic sliding doors. In the bright Bulgarian sunlight, he doesn't look back. He sprints across the drop-off zone, dodging cars. He runs across the manicured grass of the airport perimeter. He approaches a chain-link fence. It is 2.5 meters high, over 8 feet, and topped with razor wire. A normal person, a calm person would stop. But Lars doesn't even break stride. He scales the fence with terrifying speed, ignoring the razor wire, and drops down over the other side. Beyond the fence lies Highway 9, and beyond the highway, stretching for miles in every direction, is a dense, towering field of sunflowers. The camera watches him disappear into the yellow and green expanse. The sunflowers close behind him like a curtain, and that's it. Since July 8th, 2014, Lars Mittank has never been seen again. No confirmed sightings, no body found in the fields, no activity on his bank accounts. He simply sprinted out of the modern world and evaporated into the earth. How does a man simply vanish? Not in the dead of night, not in the untamed wilderness of a remote mountain range, but in the glaring sunlight of an international airport surrounded by hundreds of people. The search for Lars Mittank was massive. German and Bulgarian authorities combed the sunflower fields. They deployed scent dogs, drones, and helicopters. His mother, Sandra, hired private investigators and poured her life savings into keeping his face in the public eye. But the fields were empty. The theories that emerged from the void he left behind are as varied as they are terrifying, and as the host of Stories, Fables, Ghost Tales, I have to tell you, this is where the true crime bleeds into the psychological horror. Theory number 1, the medical break. Remember the cefuroxime 500? The antibiotic prescribed for his ruptured eardrum. It is a common, generally safe medication, but like all drugs, it has a shadow side. In extremely rare cases, now we are talking a fraction of a percent, cefuroxime can cause severe psychiatric side effects, paranoia, hallucinations, acute sudden onset psychosis. Did the combination of physical trauma, the stress of the altercation, the pain in his ear, and a rare reaction to the antibiotic trigger a catastrophic mental break? Was Lars, in those final frantic hours, entirely divorced from reality? When he looked at the airport doctor or the construction worker, did his mind overlay their faces with the visages of assassins? It is a comforting theory in a twisted way. It removes the malice from the world. It suggests that the monster chasing Lars was entirely within his own mind. If it was psychosis, he likely fled into the wilderness, succumbed to the elements, and perished alone, a victim of his own malfunctioning biology. And truly disheartening and sad. But listeners, this theory doesn't explain the texts to his mother. What is cefuroxime 500? He asked. That is the question of a lucid mind trying to understand what is happening to it, not a mind entirely lost to delusion. He recognized something was wrong. He was lucid enough to orchestrate a Western Union transfer and navigate his way to the airport. The panic only exploded at the exact moment that construction worker walked into the clinic. Which brings us to the theory number 2, the hunters. What if Lars wasn't hallucinating? What if he was absolutely right? Varna is a beautiful tourist destination, but like many cities, they rely heavily on the influx of wealthy foreigners. It has a dark, thriving underbelly. The altercation at the bar, the fight over football, was it just a petty squabble, or did Lars inadvertently offend the wrong people? People connected to the Bulgarian mafia, or violent sports syndicates known as ultras. Lars told his mother 4 men were following him. He told the doctor he didn't want to die there. He abandoned his passport and his money. the very things you need to escape. Why? Because if you're being hunted by a syndicate that controls the local infrastructure, presenting your passport at a security checkpoint isn't an escape route, it's a flare gun announcing your location. If this theory holds true, Lars didn't run because he was crazy. He ran because he realized the airport was compromised. He realized the men hunting him had found him. He abandoned his luggage because it slowed him down. He scaled an 8-foot fence topped with razor wire because whatever was behind him was infinitely worse than the cuts on his hands. And if he was caught in those sunflower fields, well, we all know how efficient organized crime can be at making people disappear. There is a third, even darker whisper that circulates the internet: human trafficking. Bulgaria is a known transit hub for illicit traders. A healthy, young, isolated foreigner, far from home, acting erratically. Was he a target of opportunity? Was the construction worker a spotter? Did Lars realize he was being boxed in and make a desperate, doomed run for freedom? To this day, Sandra Mittank refuses to give up. The Find It Lars Mittank Facebook page remains active, fielding thousands of supposed sightings from across Europe. A drifter in Germany, a homeless man in Poland. Every lead is chased down, every lead ends in crushing disappointment. It is a purgatory of hope. Lars Mittank sprinted out of the frame of a CCTV camera and out of existence. He is a modern ghost, captured in standard definition, frozen forever in mid-stride. But he is not the only one. While Lars vanished into the glaring heat of a Bulgarian summer, our next subject was found in the freezing, unforgiving grip of a Norwegian winter. Lars left behind a name, a mother, and a mountain of footage, but took his body with him. Our next ghost left her body behind, but took absolutely everything else: her name, her history, her very identity, to the grave. We are leaving the crowded terminals now of Varna behind, telltale listeners. We are heading north to the year 1970 to a place the locals call Isdalen, the Icy Valley, or as it is more commonly known, Death Valley. And with a name like that, I'm sure you understand what it implies. And by the way, if I'm absolutely butchering the name Isdalen, Isdalen, please let me know, in whichever way you see fit. It is November 29th, 1970, a quiet Sunday afternoon. A man and his 2 young daughters are hiking through the rugged, rocky terrain of Isdalen, just outside the city of Bergen, Norway. It is a bleak, beautiful landscape, shadowed by Mount Ulriken. The air is biting cold. And as they navigate a scree slope, one of the daughters notices a smell. It is distinct, acrid, and unmistakable. It is the smell of burning meat. That's right, burning meat. They follow the scent off the trail, navigating over treacherous rocks until they come to a small, hidden hollow. What they find there will ignite the largest, most baffling, and most heavily classified police investigation in Norwegian history. Lying among the rocks is the body of a woman. Imagine standing in Isdalen Valley. It is November. The air is so cold it burns your lungs. The ground is treacherous, a sprawling chaos of loose scree, wet moss, and jagged granite. Historically, this valley has a dark reputation among the locals of Bergen. In the Middle Ages, it was a place where people went to disappear. It was a place for suicides, a place where hikers lost their footing and were swallowed by the unforgiving terrain. That is why they call it Death Valley. When the hiker and his daughter stumble upon the hollow, they do not just find a body, they find a meticulously constructed tableau of death. The Bergen police arrive shortly after the hiker's panicked phone call. What they see in that rocky crevice defies all standard forensic logic. The woman is lying on her back, her hands clenched in the pugilistic stance. You know, the boxer's pose? I put my fisticuffs up, if you know what I mean. But the fire that consumed her was bizarre. She was severely burned, but almost entirely on the front of her body. The flames had devoured her face, her torso, and her thighs, leaving her features completely unrecognizable. Yet her back, resting against the cold rock, was virtually untouched. It was as if the fire had been poured directly onto her. But it is not just the body that confounds the investigators. It is the items carefully arranged around her. This is where the true crime transition into something profoundly ghostly. My telltale listeners, placed deliberately around the scorched earth are 2 plastic water bottles, melting from the residual heat. A half-empty bottle of Kloster liqueur, a sweet pink alcoholic drink, a silver spoon, a partially burned passport, and dozens of pink pills scattered in the dirt. Later identified as Phenomal, a potent brand of sleeping medication. To the untrained eye, it looks like a tragic, solitary suicide. A woman who hiked into the wilderness, drank herself into a stupor, swallowed a handful of pills, and set herself ablaze. But investigators immediately noticed something terrifyingly wrong. Something that suggests this was not a desperate final act, but a clinical, calculated erasure. Everything identifying the woman had been systematically removed. The tags on her remaining unburned clothing? Snipped off with scissors. The maker's mark on the plastic water bottle? Rubbed away. The labels on the prescription pill bottles? Scraped off entirely. Even her umbrella, found a short distance away, had its branding forcefully removed. Someone or some group of people had taken agonizing care to ensure that when this woman was found, she would be a blank slate, a ghost. The autopsy only deepens the labyrinth. The medical examiner discovers that her blood contains a lethal concentration of carbon monoxide. There is soot deep in her lungs. Do you know what that means? It means she was alive when she was burning. She was breathing in the smoke of her own destruction, inhaling it. Furthermore, her stomach contents contain undigested phenomal pills, upwards of 50 to 70 of them. A massive, incapacitating overdose. But here is the chilling contradiction. There is also a severe, unexplained bruise on the right side of her neck. Was it from a fall, or was it the result of a blunt force strike? A karate chop, perhaps, designed to paralyze or silence her before the fire was lit. The police are, frankly, paralyzed. They have a victim with no face, no fingerprint on the surrounding objects, and clothes that belong to a phantom. They circulate composite sketches based on the unburned portions of her face, hoping someone in the bustling international city of Bergen will recognize her. Nothing. Silence. It is as if she dropped from the sky into Death Valley. Days turn into weeks. The Bergen police are desperate. They begin canvassing every hotel, every boarding house, every transportation hub in the city. And then, finally, a break. 3 days after the body's found, police get a call from the Bergen railway station. There are 2 heavy suitcases sitting in the station left luggage lockers. They were checked in on November 23rd, 6 days before the body was discovered. The rental ticket has expired and no one has come to claim them. The detectives rush to the station. They open the lockers, they pull the suitcases out onto the cold tile floor. They expect to find answers. They expect to find a driver's license, a home address, a name they can cross-reference, a family they can notify. They expect to finally close the book on the tragedy of the Isdal Woman. Instead, they open Pandora's box. Inside the suitcase, they find a wardrobe of high-end European clothing, but just like the clothes in Isdalen Valley, every single manufacturer's label has been meticulously, cleanly snipped away. There are pairs of non-prescription glasses with the lenses popped out, wigs of varying hair colors and lengths, several different currencies, Norwegian krona, British pounds, Swiss francs, German marks, a tube of eczema cream with the doctor's name and the patient's name violently scratched off the prescription label, and hidden at the bottom of the largest suitcase, wrapped carefully in clothing, they find a small, black notebook. The detectives flip open the notebook. There are no diary entries, there are no phone numbers, there are no names. Instead, the pages are filled entirely with columns of letters and numbers. As follows: N space 24 space O space 30 space R full stop. P space 18 space P space 24 space T, full stop, and lastly, M space 14 space M space 22 space M, full stop. It is a code. The woman in the valley wasn't just a lost hiker. She wasn't a tragic suicide. She was operating under a cipher. She was moving across Europe wrapped in a veil of espionage, carrying disguises, untraceable cash, and encrypted schedules. The Norwegian police stare at the notebook, the realization sinking in like freezing water. They aren't investigating a local murder anymore. They have stumbled into the terrifying, invisible theater of the Cold War. The Bergen police are staring at a notebook that shouldn't exist in a standard murder investigation. Columns of letters and numbers, a meticulous handwritten ledger of secrets. They quickly realize this is no longer just a homicide case. This is a matter of national security. The notebook is immediately handed over to the Norwegian Police Security Service, the PST, the equivalent of MI5 or the FBI. You have to understand, the world in 1970, telltale listeners, the Cold War is at its freezing, paranoid peak. Europe is a chessboard of invisible operatives, double agents, and deep cover spies. The Iron Curtain divides the continent, and Norway, with its massive coastline and strategic position bordering Soviet Union, is a critical piece of that board. The PST cryptanalysts go to work on the blank, black notebook. Relatively quickly, they crack the cipher. It isn't a highly complex, mathematically generated military code. It is an operational shorthand, a memory aid for someone juggling too many lies to keep straight in their head. Let's look at one of the entries from her suitcase. N24030R dot. I've excluded the spaces to save on repetition. The analysts decipher it. N stands for November. 24 and 30 are the dates. O stands for Oslo. R stands for Rome. November 24th to November 30th. Travel from Oslo to Rome. They decode the rest of the pages. What emerges is not a diary, but a map. A frantic, zigzagging labyrinth map of a phantom moving across Europe over the course of several months. Paris, Hamburg, Basel, Stavanger, Trondheim, Oslo, Bergen. She was moving constantly, utilizing an expansive network of trains, ferries, and flights. But tracing her route is only half the battle. When the PST contacts the hotel she stayed at in those cities on those specific dates, they don't find a single woman. They find 8. That's right, 8 different women. Genevieve Lancière, Leuven, Belgium. Claudia Tilt, Brussels, Belgium. Elizabeth Lienhouwers, Brussels, Belgium. Claudia Nielsen, Ghent, Belgium. Alexia Zane Merches, Iljobjana, Slovenia. Fenella Lork, Belgium, sometimes spelled Fenella Fenella and Finella. Vera Jarl, Antwerp, Belgium. And lastly, the 8th, Vera Scholzenek, Paris. 8 different passports. The Isdal Woman wasn't just hiding. She was operating a highly sophisticated, multinational cover. The Belgian authorities confirm that all the passport identities are complete fabrications. The addresses she provided on hotel registration cards led to empty lots or non-existent streets in Brussels and Paris. The police begin interviewing the hotel staff in Bergen and across Norway, piecing together the ghost's movements. Who was this woman? How does she behave? The portraits painted by the hotel clerks, the maids, the concierge are chilling in inconsistency. She was described as striking, between 30 and 40 years old, with wide hips, long dark hair, and a pronounced gap between her front teeth. She dressed impeccably, high fashion, elegant, radiating an air of money and sophistication, but her behavior was deeply paranoid. She almost always requested room changes upon checking in, sometimes twice in a single stay. She demanded rooms with a balcony, but not for the view. She wanted rooms that didn't share a balcony with an adjoining room. She wanted isolation. She wanted to ensure no one could peer through her windows or cross over into her space. When hotel staff entered her room, they noticed she would constantly rearrange the furniture. Specifically, she would drag heavy armchairs or tables to barricade the door from the inside, even when the deadbolt was thrown. She kept entirely to herself. She ate her meals alone in her room or at small, corner tables in the hotel dining rooms, so she had a clear view of the door. Witnesses recalled a strong, distinct scent of garlic and heavy perfume lingering in her wake. And her language was a puzzle in itself. She spoke English with a strange, unidentifiable accent. Some said she spoke German but broken, as if she was masking her fluency. She used German idioms but pronounced them with a French intonation. She was such a chameleon, actively blurring the edges of her origin. But the most damning piece of this puzzle, the detail that elevates this from a strange missing persons case to a full-blown international espionage thriller, lies in where she traveled. The coded notebook didn't just track her movements through random European cities. It tracked her movements to very specific locations in Norway at very specific times. In 1970, the Norwegian military was developing a top-secret, highly classified piece of technology. It was a weapon system that would change the balance of naval power in the Cold War. It was called the Penguin Anti-Ship Missile. It was the first Western anti-ship missile with an infrared seeker. The military was conducting highly classified field tests on the Penguin missile off the western coast of Norway. The Isdal Woman's coded itinerary placed her in Stavanger, Trondheim, and Bergen at the exact times those secret missile tests were being conducted in the nearby fjords. She wasn't a tourist. She wasn't a businesswoman. She was a spy. But for whom? Was she Soviet KGB, trying to steal the technical specifications of the new Western weapon? Was she Israeli Mossad, hunting down exiled Nazi war criminals? A theory supported by the fact that many former Nazis had fled to South America and Europe, and Bergen was a known transit point? Was she an independent contractor, an industrial spy selling secrets to the highest bidder? Or was she a double agent whose cover had just been blown? Let's go back to her final days, the timeline leading up to the Burning Hollow in Isdalen Valley. On November 18th, she travels on a coastal ferry. A witness comes forward years later, claiming they saw the Isdal Woman on the deck. But she wasn't alone. The witness reports seeing her engaged in a heated, intense argument with a man who has never been identified. On November 23rd, she checks out of the hotel Horderheimen in Bergen. She pays her bill in cash. She takes a taxi to the railway station and deposits those two heavy suitcases in the left luggage lockers. She is unburdening herself. She is traveling light. Later that afternoon, she visits a local shoe store. She buys a pair of rubber Wellington boots, the exact boots later found next to her charred body in Death Valley. And then she vanishes from the public eye. For 6 days, from November 23rd to November 29th, the Isdal Woman is a ghost. Where did she sleep? Who did she meet? Did she walk into Isdalen Valley alone, or was she taken there? If she was a spy whose cover was blown, the scene in the valley makes a terrifying kind of sense. The snipped tags, the sanded fingerprints, the burning of the face and torso, it is the ultimate sanction, a professional erasure. When an intelligence agency eliminates a threat, they don't just kill the operative, they kill the identity. They ensure the body can never be traced back to them. These sleeping pills could have been forced. The fire could have been the final, brutal measure to destroy dental records and facial recognition. But there is a lingering, horrifying alternative. One that echoes the tragedy of Lars Mittank. What if the paranoia was real, but the threat was not? What if the Isdal Woman, consumed by the pressure of her clandestine life, crushed under the weight of 7 different identities, simply shattered? What if the barricaded doors, the changing rooms, the frantic zigzagging across Europe were the actions of a mind collapsing in on itself? Could a highly trained operative have hiked into that freezing, desolate valley, swallowed 50 sleeping pills and set herself on fire to ensure she would never ever be captured by the invisible enemies chasing her? For 46 years, the trail was stone cold. The Isdal Woman was buried in an unmarked grave in Bergen, in a zinc-lined coffin that would not decompose, just in case. One day, relatives came looking for her. Her funeral was attended only by 18 members of the Bergen police force. They laid flowers on the grave of a woman whose name they didn't know. But science, tale-teller listeners, is a relentless hunter. It does not forget. And in 2016, modern technology cracked open the vault of the Isdal Woman once again. For 46 years, the Isdal Woman was a ghost trapped in a zinc-lined box. But while the flesh decays and memories fade, there is one part of the human body that holds onto its secrets with a rigid, almost terrifying stubbornness: the jawbone. In 1970, forensic science could tell you a blood type and a cause of death. But in 2016, modern science can tell you the story of a lifetime etched in the very calcium of your skeleton. The Norwegian authorities, working alongside investigative journalists from the NRK and the BBC, realized that while the Isdal Woman's body was buried, her jawbone had been kept in a forensic archive at the Haukeland University Hospital. 4 decades, it sat in a cardboard box on a dusty shelf waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. In 2016, they opened that box. They extracted her teeth and they subjected them to a miraculous, terrifying process known as isotope analysis. Every drop of water you drink, every piece of food you eat as a child, leaves a microscopic chemical signature in your teeth. Oh yeah, this is some supervillain/superhero sort of technology, specifically the isotopes of oxygen and strontium. Because the geology of the Earth varies from region to region, the water in one country has a different chemical fingerprint than the water in another. When your adult teeth form in your jaw, they lock in those isotopes permanently. Your teeth are essentially a geological GPS tracker of your childhood. The scientists ground down a microscopic sample of the Isdal Woman's tooth enamel and analyzed the isotopes, and suddenly, the ghost had a coordinate. The results were astonishing. She was not Norwegian, she was not British or purely French, as her forged passport and strange accent had suggested. The isotopes indicated she was born around 1930 near Nuremberg, Germany. But she didn't stay there. The chemical signatures shifted in her later childhood, indicating a move. She spent her formative years near the border of France and Germany, likely in the Alsace region, or perhaps just across the border in Belgium or Luxembourg. Furthermore, her handwriting, the way she crossed her sevens and swooped her letters in her fake hotel registrations, was analyzed by graphologists. It perfectly matched the style taught in francophone schools in the 1940s. Think about the timeline, listeners. Born in 1930 in Germany, moving to the border regions during her childhood took place during the horrific, continent-shattering climax of the Second World War. Did the trauma of the war, the bombings, the displacement, the constant suffocating fear of the Gestapo, and the shifting borders forge her into a woman capable of living 8 different lives? Was she a refugee who learned early on that the only way to survive was to become a chameleon? Or did intelligence agencies recruit her specifically because her tragic, rootless background made her the perfect operative? A woman with no family to miss her and the natural talent for blending in. The science has given us her origin, but it couldn't tell us how she ended up burning in Isdalen Valley. For that, we need a human memory. In 2005, long before the isotope analysis, a man finally came forward to the police. He had kept this secret for 35 years, terrified of the implications, terrified of the invisible forces that might still be watching. In November 1970, this man was 26 years old. He was an avid hiker, familiar with the treacherous paths of Isdalen. 5 days before the charred body was found, he was hiking up the mountainside. The weather was brutal. It was late afternoon, the light was falling, and a freezing drizzle was beginning to fall. As he navigated a narrow, rocky pass, he saw a woman coming up the trail toward him. Instantly, he knew something was wrong. She was not dressed for the mountains. She was wearing an elegant coat, fine clothing, and those cheap rubber Wellington boots she had just bought in the city. Her face was pale. She was exhausted, stumbling over the rocks. But it wasn't the clothes that chilled the hiker to his bone. It was her eyes. He told the police that her face was a mask of absolute paralyzing terror. She looked wildly around, like a hunted animal looking for a way out of a trap. As they closed the distance on the narrow path, she looked directly at him. She opened her mouth. The hiker thought she was going to scream, to beg for help, to say something, anything. But then, she snapped her head back, looking over her shoulder down the trail. About 20 meters behind her, coming up the path, were 2 men. They were dressed in dark, heavy coats. They didn't look like hikers. They looked like they belonged on a city street in Berlin or Moscow. They moved with a steady, relentless, predatory pace. When the woman saw the men, her mouth snapped shut. The hiker described the look that washed over her face as total resignation. The desperate hope of rescue vanished, replaced by the crushing realization that she was out of time. She lowered her eyes, stepped to the side of the trail, and allowed the hiker to pass. She didn't say a word. The hiker continued down the mountain. He passed the two men in dark coats. They didn't look at him. They didn't acknowledge him. They kept their eyes fixed entirely on the woman in the elegant coat, walking toward the desolate hollow of Death Valley. When the news of the charred body broke 5 days later, the hiker immediately recognized the composite sketch. He went to the Bergen police station. He sat down with a detective and told him exactly what he had seen. The terrified woman, the two men following her, the silent exchange on the freezing mountain path. The detective listened carefully. He took notes, and then he looked at the young hiker and said something that has haunted the man for the rest of his life. The detective said, "Forget her. She was dispatched. The case will never be solved. Forget her. She was dispatched." With those words, the Norwegian police effectively admitted that they knew exactly what was happening in Isdalen Valley. They knew she wasn't a suicide. They knew she was hunted, and they knew that the forces that hunted her were so powerful, so deeply entrenched in the geopolitical nightmare of the Cold War that a local murder investigation was utterly meaningless against them. The police closed the case as a suicide shortly after. The official report states that she ingested the pills herself and set the fire herself. The physical impossibility of the soot in her lungs, the bruise on her neck, the two men on the trail, the coded notebook, the 8 passports, all of it was swept under the rug of national security. She was an acceptable casualty in an invisible war. We are left with 2 empty spaces, 2 outlines drawn in chalk on the canvas of history. Let us pull back, telltale listeners. Let us look at these 2 tragedies not as isolated incidents, but as a mirrored reflection of the ultimate human nightmare, the nightmare of being hunted. On the surface, Lars Mittank and the Isdal Woman could not be more different. Lars was a young man of the modern era, an era of digital footprint, social media, and constant connectivity. He vanished in the blazing oppressive heat of a Bulgarian summer. He disappeared from an international airport, one of the most heavily surveilled, populated, and secure environments on the planet. His vanishing was captured in high definition, a chaotic explosive sprint into a field of bright yellow sunflowers. His identity is known to millions. We know his face, his voice, his favorite football team. We know everything about him except where he is. The Isdal Woman was a phantom of the analogous age, an era of rotary phones, carbon copy hotel registers, and shadows. She was found in the freezing, unforgiving grip of a Norwegian winter. She died in an isolated, desolate rocky hollow, hidden from the eyes of the world. Her final moments were not a frantic sprint, but a slow, methodical march to an execution. She left behind the trail of physical evidence, suitcases, clothes, and diary, but absolutely zero identity. We have her teeth, her handwriting, her DNA. We have pieces of her, but we have absolutely no idea who she was. Fire and ice, the public spectacle and the private erasure. Yet beneath these stark contrasts, there is a terrifying psychological parallel that binds Lars Mittank and the Isdal Woman together. It is the anatomy of profound, inescapable terror. Think about the gaze of the hunted. Go back to the clinic in Varna airport. Lars is sitting on the examination table. He's already on edge, his nerves frayed by a sleepless night of paranoia and pain. Then the doors open. A man in a construction uniform walks in. We do not know what Lars saw in that man's face. The doctor saw a contractor, Lars saw the reaper. In that singular explosive second, Lars's brain calculated that the threat was so immediate, so absolute, that his only option was to abandon every tether to his life. He didn't grab his passport, he didn't grab his wallet. The survival instinct overrode everything. It bypassed logic, bypassed social convention, and engaged pure, unfiltered flight. Now cross the continent and go back in time to the freezing mountain path in Isdalen. The Isdal Woman is walking up the trail. She's exhausted. She's wearing elegant clothing in a brutal wilderness, a clear sign that her presence there is not recreational. It is desperate. The hiker comes down to the path and sees her face. He describes a mask of paralyzing terror. She looks wildly around. She is searching for an exit. But then, she looks back down the trail. She sees the two men in the dark coats. Her reaction is the exact opposite of Lars's, but it is born of the exact same realization. Lars realized he had to run right now to survive. The Isdal woman staring at the man behind her realized that running was utterly useless. Lars's terror exploded outward into kinetic energy. The Isdal woman's terror collapsed inward into absolute resignation. She stepped off the path. She let the hiker pass. She accepted that her flight, which had taken her across Paris, Hamburg, and Oslo, had finally reached a dead end in Death Valley. And as listeners of Stories, Fables, Ghostly Tales, we spend our time analysing the bumps in the night and the shadows in the corners, but I submit to you that there is no monster, no cryptid, no phantom more terrifying than the human mind when it realises it is entirely alone, and that the world has turned against them. Consider the isolation of both these souls. Lars was surrounded by hundreds of people at Varna airport. Tourists buying coffee, families checking luggage, security guards patrolling the concourse. He was in a sea of humanity, but he was completely and utterly isolated. In his mind, these people could not save him. They were either oblivious bystanders or potential threats. The isolation of paranoia in a crowded room is a suffocating, crushing weight. He couldn't speak to them, he couldn't ask for help because he didn't know who was part of the conspiracy. The Isdal woman's isolation was structural. It was by design. When you live 7 different lives, you have no life at all. When you cannot tell the hotel clerk your real name, when you have to scratch the label off your eczema cream so no one can trace your doctor, you sever every genuine human connection. If she was a spy, she chose that isolation. But in those final days, barricading the door of room 407 in the Hotel Horderheimen, moving furniture to block the entry, that isolation must have turned into a tomb. When the men finally came for her, if indeed they were the ones who killed her, who would she call? She didn't exist. You cannot report the murder of a ghost. This brings us to the most unsettling question of all, the question that keeps these two cases alive on internet forums and deep dive documentaries decades later. Is it worse to know exactly who you are, but have the world entirely lose track of where you went? Or is it worse for the world to know exactly where your body is, but have absolutely no memory of who you were? Lars Mittank is a missing person, a son, a friend, a worker. His mother Sandra keeps his room exactly as he left it. She answers messages on the Facebook page every single day. She lives in a state of suspended animation, waiting for a knock on the door that may never come. Lars's physical form is missing, but his identity is fiercely, painfully alive in the heart of those who loved him. His ghost haunts the living through absence. The Isdal woman is a found body. We have her coordinates, we have her jawbone in a box in a hospital archive. We know the exact chemical composition of her childhood drinking water. But she has no mother waiting for her, no friends keeping her Facebook page alive. The police buried her in an unmarked grave with a zinc lining, a monument to a zero. Her physical form is accounted for, but her identity has been violently, professionally obliterated. Her ghost haunts the living through presence, a heavy, undeniable presence that refuses to be named. Both of these cases force us to confront the fragility of our own existence. We walk through the world believing we are solid. We have our IDs and our wallets on our phones, our names on our leases, our faces in photographs of our friends. Hell, even photographs of the food that we eat that tell everyone where we're at. We believe we are anchored. But Lars Mittank showed us that it only takes one ruptured eardrum, one strange pill, or one wrong look in a foreign bar for the anchor to snap. And catastrophically. It only takes a sudden, terrifying shift in perception for a man to drop everything he owns and sprint into the wilderness, never to return. And the Isdal woman showed us that the anchor is just an illusion anyway. If the right people or the wrong people decide that you shouldn't exist, they can strip away your name, your history, and your face. They can turn you into a puzzle made of burned paper and clipped tags. We are all just one bad day, one wrong turn, one terrifying realization away from the edge of the map. The authorities in Bulgaria have officially classified Lars Mittank's case as a missing person. The file remains open, but the leads have dried up. The sunflower fields have been harvested and replanted a dozen times over. The trail is gone. The authorities in Norway officially classified the Isdal woman's death as a suicide. despite the coded notebook, despite the 8 identities, despite the man on the trail who saw her hunted, the official records state that a woman with no name walked into a frozen valley and set herself on fire. The file is closed, but we know better. The listeners of Stories, Fables, Ghostly Tales know that the official story is rarely the true story. And so we leave them where we found them. Lars Mittank, forever frozen in standard definition, spritzing away from the modern world and vanishing into a sea of Bulgarian sunflowers. And our nameless operative, taking her 8 faces, Genevieve, Claudia, Elizabeth Finella, Alexia Vera Jarl, Vera Scholzneck, and Claudia Nilsson, into the freezing abyss of Death Valley. One man who left us with a mountain of footage and no body, and one woman who left us a body, but absolutely no identity. They are the ultimate reminders that no matter how secure we feel in our digital, documented lives, the tethers that hold us to reality are incredibly fragile. It only takes one moment of pure terror or one command from an invisible enemy for a person to step off the map and become a ghost. I want to know what you think. Head over to our YouTube channel or drop a comment in our socials and reach out to me directly in Patreon as well, which is www.patreon.com/SFGT. Was Lars Mittank experiencing a tragic chemical break from reality, or was he running from a very real, very dangerous syndicate in Varna? And who was the Isdal Woman? A Soviet spy, a terrified refugee, or a pawn in a Cold War game she couldn't win? Your theories keep these mysteries alive by talking about them, by refusing to let their files gather dust. We push back against the shadows that tried to claim them. Thank you for walking into the dark with me on this special extended episode. If you survived the journey, please make sure you subscribe, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and share this episode with a friend who appreciates a true mystery. It is the absolute best way to support the show and ensure we can keep digging up these stories. And speaking of the incredible support that keeps the microphone on and the shadows at bay, I need to take a moment to thank the inner circle of our Patreon family. To my old night tea titan, Matto Star. Matto Star. Matto, my friend, I want to say a massive thank you for the jaw-dropping support and your endless kindness that you offer to me and the podcast. It means the absolute world to me, mate. It not only keeps the lights on, but your input also helps the direction of the podcast. I am eternally grateful to know you and call you my friend. Now I have to ask you, after sitting through this double feature, where do your instincts lean, mate? If you were in Lars's shoes at the airport, was he chased or was it a reaction to the drug? And what's your read on the Isdal Woman? Was she a master spy who finally got caught, or something else entirely? Let me know your theory, Matto. I'm keen to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much, man, for your support. You are an absolute gem of a friend. Have a fantastic week ahead. I also want to send a huge and shadowy thank you to my White Tea Warlords.
White Tea Warlords!
To Lesasaurus Rex, an incredible friend and supporter, keep crushing it at the gym. Maybe channel some of that adrenaline into deadlifting the heavy theories we unpacked tonight. And also please do 7 more reps of your hardest exercise. Keep it safe, but please push the envelope, buddy. Get those gains. And have an absolutely wonderful, wonderful week, Lesa. And to Maya, my queen of cats, my friend and supporter. Oh yes, the undisputed queen of the cats. I hope your feline familiars keep you safe and comfortable while we wandered through the dark. Thank you so much for your support and friendship, Maya. Have an epic week ahead. And to my final White Tea Warlord, Sangeetha, friend, supporter, and our resident seer. With your intuition, I'd love to know if your inner eye caught any missing pieces from the Isdal Valley that the rest of us overlooked. Thank you for being here. Until next time, have yourself a wonderful, wonderful week. And finally, a massive shout out to my Ulgrain forces. Thank you for standing guard on the perimeter, holding the line, and keeping this community strong. I am lucky to have Chad Warren, Peter Raffaelli, Just Heather, Juicebox Andy, Divided by Zero, Paige Kramer, Seductive Smiles, Jane Gumnick, Michael Krupp, and Steve the Creeper. Thank you so much for your support, legends. I couldn't do this without your help and support. Until next time, keep your digital footprint secure, trust your instincts, And remember, the world is full of ghosts, and not all of them are dead. I am the Tale Teller, and you've been listening to Stories, Fables, Ghostly Tales. Till next we meet.
Stories, fables, ghostly tales.